And welcome back to another episode of the Fantasy Take TV podcast. Joining me is George and Eno, and we've got so much to cover after the prelims and the Brownlow. We'll go over both of those. We'll talk about how we've done on Finals Fantasy footy so far, talk a little bit about the trade period and some of the nuggets that are coming out of that, and obviously preview the grand final and talk about our tips and all that good stuff, and maybe do some norm predictions as well. But boys, how are we doing? George, Eno, let's start with you. The G-Man 2-0. NFL's off to a bit of a flyer, but otherwise, how are you?
Good, mate. Very good. I missed the game. I'll admit again. It's hard to switch the body clock when this stuff's at 3 a.m. I know you're giving it a go, but I'm cautious of doing it because I was speaking to Jules before. Daylight savings comes in like for us, and then I think for them or whatever happens there. So starts at 5 a.m. in like I want to say about a month or so. So I don't want to switch it and then have to switch back because I think waking up at 5 a.m. is not too bad. 3 is a terrible sweet spot. So, watched a bit of the Brownlow. The Gunners were on, so got the 3 points there, and then got up at about 6, I think, or 7. Watched the rest of the games, but not too bad. A lot of sport, a lot of things happening. Grand final week, pretty keen. George, what have you been up to, mate?
Not a whole lot. Did give up on a few fantasies now that NFL has come. So yeah, it lasted. How long? What's FPL? Is it game week 6 now?
Game week 8, but we lost a couple as well.
Oh, is it? So. Okay. Threw in the towel. No good at that.
I tried.
AFLW kind of threw in the towel there as well. And but it is a good format. But and Sports Deck, well, my captain scored 10 this week, so not great. But anyway, other than that, going quite well. Keen to talk about the grand final and normie predictions and stuff like that.
Yeah, very good, very good. So this week, there's no way I'm doing 3 a.m. back to back. So
did you do it?
Especially because it got work. So I just woke up at like 5:45, so I could get the witching hour of the red zone for the morning afternoon session. Good. That works pretty well. A lot of crazy comebacks this week. Yeah. But let's talk with the let's start with the Brownlow, shall we? Because that was last night, as of when we were recording, and I guess a little bit of a surprise with Cripps kind of getting up and winning it in the end. I don't think, we didn't really do predictions on this, but I don't think many people really had anyone other than Neil winning. So what were your thoughts, and, how did you feel about Cripps winning it, especially given the controversy over his suspension?
I actually thought it was quite fitting, like in the end, just the way it worked out. Like I actually said after that round 23 game, obviously them losing and whatever, he was awesome for through the last 3 quarters in that game. I was like, he's probably won the Brownlow based off that. Like he's going to get a 2 or 3 there. Probably gets him over the line. I said that to a mate, and I put like just a stupid $10 on him at like $6 or $7 or something. And obviously that was what got him across the line. But as I said, I watched the Gunners and the Brownlow with that starting at like maybe half an hour, 40 minutes before that did. When I saw that he didn't get the 3 in round 1, Cripps, when he like clearly was best on against us, he got like he didn't even get it to 2. He got a 1. I was like, the Brownlow just never fails to amaze you, really, like with some of the stuff that was going on. Like, we're going to get to it, but Carl Amon getting 4 best on grounds is an absolute joke. But
so there was a stat of looking at all the players that got 3 Brownlow votes but didn't get any coaches' votes, and Carl was in there 3 of his 4 best on grounds, which is pretty wild.
All 4 best on grounds, he led the dream team. So he's 13 marks that he gets on the wing and kicks. The umps just sort by fantasy? I don't know. Is there a couple of them that do that?
Maybe he's a really likable guy and they just notice him on the ground. I don't know.
Anyway, I'll put respect to Cripps. I think he had a pretty good year. I think any of those 5 or 6 are probably deserving, really. But look, pretty weird. Carlton have a Brownlow medalist, 2 Coleman medalists, and they can't even get in the finals. But it is promising, though. Like their list is very promising.
Yeah,
I'll let you speak, George.
So just before we move on to George's thoughts, you've mentioned Gunners a couple of times now, and like I know it's been your team name for Supercoach all year, and I thought I could just get by without knowing what this is. It's an Arsenal reference, right?
It is, yeah. The Cannons,
okay.
Like that's where, the Gunners.
Is that their logo?
That is part of it. Yes, yeah. It's the OG one, but it's still incorporated in the logo today. But yes, it is a team nickname. JD, no, I'm not we won't go there.
Okay, for those who knows less about soccer than me.
For those that are listening that don't follow FPL, they might be wondering what the Gunners are. So
it's got nothing to do with FPL. They're my team. I've gone for them for a long time. long time.
Sorry, EPL. I'm using EPL and FPL now, interchangeably. Who cares about the actual league when there's fantasy on the line? George, your thoughts on the Brownlow? Any moments that stuck out to you?
It's a pretty dumb award, really. It's Coach's Award is much better. Cripps, I'm happy for him. Like, he stuck with Carlton. He's carried that club for a while, was injured for a while there, but it's more the Carlton supporters that are annoying, I think, like trying to stick it up everyone. That's probably the most annoying part of this, but I was hoping kind of for a tie, 3-4 players. Cripps, I mean, he wasn't the favourite for a reason. Like, I'm okay with him winning, but he pulled 3 against the Crows. I don't know how that happened. And then Neil was top 2 in the coaches' vouchers in the Q Clash, got no votes. And then, Cripps got those 3 against the Crows, and all of a sudden it's he went from $1.10 to some long odds straight away, Lockie Neil. So it is what it is. I think the Carl Amon one was really, really weird. For him to beat Rosie, it was slightly frustrating, especially for me, because I did rate Rosie's season, but
doesn't matter that he beat him. Just the fact that he got 50, he got more votes than West Coast. Carl Amon on his own. I mean, I know West Coast.
I think West Coast got 15 or 14. Carl Amon got 14. Same with Tex.
Did Kennedy end up leading that?
Yeah,
he doubled the second best on grounds, I think. At West Coast.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Anyway. What about Billy Frampton? I thought he got robbed of votes.
Yeah, he did. Had a sneaky bet on that.
That's a joke for like 30 people that know about.
Oh, was that the Dogs game, Jules?
Yeah. Just 12 intercept marks. How could he not?
No, he was prime. Brian Lake would have been proud of that performance, and I thought he was a shoe-in, but apparently not.
But the umpires wouldn't know his name. How are they going to vote for him?
Yeah, he got blonde hair, blonde tips, so thought they would notice him, maybe, but maybe not.
Before we leave this earth,
they did
we're going to be voted
on,
by the umpires. This award, like, is this AFL ever going to make a change?
It's a bit like the Noel Smith. It's just voted by journalists, so or like ex-AFL like media players. But the umpire's job is to umpire.
We love getting into journalists, but I would rather them do it than the umpires.
Like, I don't know. I don't like journalists voting for awards.
They all are journalists.
From what I've seen in like basketball and like NFL, like I just don't like journalist awards. I'm really not a fan. I think there must be some solution that's better than umpires, journalists, or fan vote. Like all of these are pretty flawed. The thing that I really don't like about journalists is a lot of people do a fine job at being journalists, but they are not watching the game to assess who is the best player on ground and who does the best. I think like the coaches' votes is the thing I like the most out of everything that's done so far. But I can see that also being problematic because coaches have a bias or a vested interest in voting for, players, especially if they know someone's likely to be up there. So like, I don't know. I think there has to be a better solution, but I don't think like journalists are a big improvement on umpires, to be perfectly honest.
I think perhaps like analysts from commentary teams. So like I don't get the SE and whoever's not the caster, but the guy that's analyzing on Channel 7, SEN, Triple M, whatever, whoever's doing that sort of role. I don't know what else you could put out there, but not umpires or journalists.
Yeah. I heard some umpires say that like they don't particularly want to do it either. Like it's a burden on them almost to have to do it. It's like it's not what they're trained to do.
No. Anyway,
all right. Well,
is it ever going to change? I don't know.
I think it could. I don't know. It depends whether or not they see a problem with the award or not. If they don't, then it won't. All right. Let's moving on though and get into the games from the weekend. So 2 pretty interesting matches. We'll start with the Cats and the Lions. Enno, do you want to start us off with your thoughts on the game and what you saw went down?
Just class above the Cats. Like Lions did well to get to where they were, and really I think their advantage was probably getting them in the midfield. And I think what they were in the first 10 minutes, George, and then after that, Geelong sort of matched them in there and probably I think cleared them in the end. I think they won contested by 20 in the end, and then everywhere else across the ground. Like I was saying, they just have a superior forward line. Their back line was set up well to just mark every kick that Brisbane wanted to kick forward. And look, they got through a couple of times early, but as the game went on, it was just DeConning and Stewart just mopping up everything. And the second half, I didn't, to be honest, really watch. Like that game was over. So, yeah, they done well. Brisbane, everyone sort of wrote them off in around 23 to even do any damage, and they won 2 finals. So, it's funny that that's their most successful season, probably because where they come from, whereas they've had top 4 finishes that have gone worse. But look, they could be sitting here next year with Josh Dunkley and Will Ashcroft. So, who's to say they can't continue and even get better?
George, how did you feel about the game?
Honestly, Chris Scott chopped up Chris Fagan something bad and just annihilated him in the coach's box. It's interesting. During the season, I don't take too much notice of game plan because I'm too busy looking at scores on my phone and watching certain individual plays. But when finals, you kind of sit back and watch footy for what it is. And what Chris Scott's, like, the game plan, like, it just, Brisbane could not do anything. They had the spare at the back. There was vision, like Tom Stewart just sits 20 meters behind the ball, doing nothing. And then he, like, pushes up when the high half forward pushes up. Then defends back. They defend behind as well, so it's easy to spoil. Probably more like traditional defending, but getting their numbers behind the ball. And then what happens is, because they have numbers behind the ball, they're more likely to win it on entries. And as soon as there's a turnover, Geelong go mad. They sprint through the middle of the ground, pressure, and Brisbane weren't working hard enough through the middle of the ground, and it happened time and time again. And not only that, in the clearances, they started well. It was 7 clearances to 2. Neil was playing really well, and then they kind of got a hold of Neil, and that was all over. Clearances weren't as good anymore. But, the whole Brisbane could not move the ball. They could not keep up with Geelong at all. But, we see, like, Collingwood, Sydney, and Geelong, like, they're the 3 teams. They're the best pressure through the middle of the ground, especially on turnover. And that's basically what we've seen in finals. I think those 3 teams are probably clearly ahead. I think you can make a case, maybe not Collingwood, but I was very impressed with them. We'll get to them after, but I think, the Brisbane, the pressure through the middle of the ground, not good enough. And I don't think Dunkley and Ashcroft solved that completely, but it's definitely going to help.
Yeah, I think that's spot on, George. Our talking points from last week were that Brisbane Lions defense couldn't stand up to the strength of the Cats forward line, and that their forward line has looked clunky when they've had the 3 talls in there, and that was a bit of a concern, having them kind of come back after not playing with each other the last couple of weeks. And sure enough, it felt like that was exactly what played out. The Brisbane forward line looked dysfunctional. Hawkins and Cameron had 10 scoring shots between them. Like, Hawkins dominated Andrews again. They just don't have a good matchup for him whatsoever. And then, I think one that you're not going to be incredibly thrilled with, but Danger looks like he's hitting his straps at the right time. Looked really good in this game. And I don't think the Cats need him to be on to win games, especially they would have been fine without him for this one. But it's another thing, like another weapon they have to pull out, which is really good. The injury news out of this game was Max Holmes, who had a hamstring injury and was subbed out after a really good game. Like, he played amazing.
He's awesome.
He's very good. He's kind of come from the heavens a bit, but quickly becoming one of my favorites for the Cats. There was an update after the open training session they had today, which basically says that he hasn't been ruled out of the game for the Swans. He's a chance to get up. The scans on his hamstring haven't extinguished hope, was, I think, the quote. And he's presented well in running and clinical formats, or assessments. So he's a chance to get and play, which would be great, because I think it'd be very, very sad, and quite a big loss for them, actually, surprisingly big loss. On the Brisbane side, you had Rayner that picked up a rolled ankle in the 3rd quarter and got subbed off, but obviously their season's over, and it didn't seem like it was a major injury. At least I hope not on Rayner's side. All right, moving on to the next game, which was a lot closer and a lot more interesting. It was the Swans versus Collingwood, and this was a pretty impressive effort from Collingwood, because the Swans looked like they could break away and really open up that game numerous times through the first 3 quarters, and you kind of wouldn't have even begrudged Collingwood for falling away at those points, especially with a young list. They've been winning close games for so long. You kind of see the point where they just break, but it didn't happen. They held in the whole way and then mounted a pretty amazing comeback in the 4th quarter, only just to fall short. It's one of those ones where if there was a couple more minutes, I think Collingwood would have been favourite to get over the line. But yeah, so much to unpack with this game. George, do you want to start with how you saw it and some highlights for you?
Yeah, really fun game to watch. I think Collingwood may have lost in the first half when they started Maynard on Buddy, and Moore could not get into the game. I think like after half time, Moore was just about best on ground, I think. So that when they moved Moore to Buddy, in that way, Moore could, because he could outwork him, was able to take a few intercepts and even provide a bit of drive as well. So Collingwood might have won if they got that matchup right. I'm not sure what was happening there because Buddy did kick a few goals early, I think. So, but other than that, yeah, very enjoyable game. You can sort of see what Collingwood do when they're down. It's almost like they have set plays and they get the ball in the middle of the ground to like hit Pendlebury. They let Crisp just go for a run. That happened again this game. So, yeah, they probably left it too late, unfortunately. But Sydney's a little concerning with how they finished the game. I don't know why. I think when Sam Reid went down, well, first of all, Callum Mills, please leave him in the midfield. They were starting to lose the clearances when Mills went out. And I think Mills went to Pendlebury in the second quarter. Pendlebury had one touch, and that was a free kick. So he basically didn't touch the ball when Mills was on him. Mills went back, and that was not a good move, I don't think. But Mills is so good in defense. It's like, you know. But yeah, I hope they keep him in the midfield because he's their best midfielder. So I was impressed with Sydney up until they tried not to lose rather than to win, and that can kind of happen. So otherwise, I thought that they were outstanding in the first half, but a little concerning where their mindset sort of shifted late in the game. But I don't know. How did you see the game?
Yeah, you're pretty right. Like Sydney probably could have been up more in the first half. Collingwood just kick every goal. They kick so straight, keep themselves in games like they have all year. And then you're right at the end. I think Sydney just started playing safe. Like everyone just gets nervous against Collingwood, knowing what they've done and what they can do, and they did it again. And Sydney just hung like the plays at the end. That was like just insane to watch the last 2 or 3 minutes without all the. That's what footy's the best. Like when it's like that at the end, you're like just every single thing that can happen on the ground is like so pivotal, and them just rushing that behind to win the game at the end. But I think it's the best game Jack Crisp played all year for sure. Like he was immense. Use the ball quite well. I just got it going forward. Like 20 contested touches is
20
unreal.
Contested of 29.
Yeah.
Kicked a goal, 11 clearances, which was I think double almost the next best. I think 6 was the next best on either side. So
yeah. And for a team that's like him and Pendles are their still best midfielders, relying on those guys, like he had to pretty much do that to keep him in the game. And the other thing I want to mention is Hickey. Like I just think at pivotal times he grabbed the ball at the ruck. I think like I want to say 5 or 6 times, and DC just couldn't really match him in there. So that hurt them quite a bit. But I think early Sydney probably could have been up more. Collingwood kept themselves in it, and then we just saw what happened every year. Or every game this year, but they just couldn't get over the line this time. So super year. But it'd be interesting to see what happens going forward for Collingwood. Because
just occurred to me, did you guys see who was rocking in the second half for Sydney?
Isaac Heaney.
He had a few.
Yeah, so like the Reid loss did affect them, obviously. And it'll be interesting to see. I don't think he'll get up and who they bring in, but could have been Pete Laddams if he wasn't a dickhead. But
he's lost a spot in the grand final. DL like that one.
Man. So yeah, that definitely hurt him. So but nah, unreal game. One of the best prelims. I mean, we always get good prelims. I feel one really good one a year, and they're always the best games. So.
I guess like another couple of like tactical moves from Sydney. So I think they did a pretty good job on Nick Dacos again. I actually think that like he's been one of the harder ones to tag just because he's more versatile than some of the other halfbacks that get tagged. So they did move him around to experiment with him to try and free him up and get him into the play still. So I think Collingwood actually did a pretty good job of managing that. But then the work on Jordan De Goey, which was a lot of defensive stuff from Parker. I mean, it was a team effort, but I think he was the one that was matched up on him for most of the game. Really good job of taking him out of the game, given he'd been their best on ground probably through the first two weeks. So, I thought that was worthwhile pointing out. Couple of injuries out of this game. So Mason Cox went down, which created, all types of weird rucking things with Kruger coming on. I guess like a quick question, especially with Hickey's dominance. I don't think Cameron played particularly bad. Like he did a lot of the stuff around the ground well, but we're going to talk about Grundy a little bit more in the trade section, no doubt. But he looks like he's leaving more likely than not at the moment. Do you feel like there's been some talk about like whether he was the missing piece to really, getting the win in this game? Like, how do you feel about that? Do you think he's a required player in the side, or they're fine to move him on?
I was listening to Triple M today, and Big Tom Brown was saying that Collingwood have the belief that they only want a certain amount of money tied up into the ruck department in their cap space. I think they're about 500 grand over of how much they'd like to spend in the rucks, and that's why it sounds like he thinks Grundy's going to Melbourne. So yeah, basically, while Grundy's a better ruck, but the rest of their team will get better because of more cap space. And that will allow them to bring in like McStay and I think Bobby Hills, maybe Tom Mitchell, not exactly sure on Tom Mitchell, but Bobby Hills requested to Collingwood. McStay is going to Collingwood, so we know that. So from that perspective, I think the right thing is to let him go. But yeah, Grundy is the better player. So yeah, I wasn't impressed with DC, but he's had some good games and it's his first year basically rucking as like the sole ruckman. But I didn't. Yeah, he wasn't great, but I'll hold the faith with him.
Yeah, he was serviceable. Just I think at key points, Hickey just took the ball out of the ruck, got it going forward, and was like, "Damn!" Like if you had Grundy there, could probably contest a bit better. And yeah, I don't think Grundy's like streets better, but he's better. Yeah. So maybe could have changed the tides. Who knows?
Yep. And then, as pointed out, Sam Reid went down in the third quarter with an adductor injury. It sounds like he is unlikely to get up for the grand final, which is a pretty big loss to the Swans because their depth at that position isn't great, especially with Laddams, as we kind of mentioned, being suspended. So it's probably a Joel Amati or a Hayden McLean, who are both kind of rawish talls that have played limited game time that could come into the side, which is a little bit of a worry. Do they explore Paddy McCartan up forward? Surely not. But anyway, that'll be interesting to see what they do with this. Yeah. Yeah. Or you could bring in like a Will Gould for debut, apparently, and then put McCartan forward. No. Very unlikely. But yeah, let's. I think that is a big hurt for them. But before we jump into how we did for the finals footy fantasy this week and then preview the grand final, well, we might have a word from our sponsor this week.
Yes, manscaped.com. Get your... What do they got? They got everything. They got the Weed Whacker 4.0, the Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer. Also, you can get the Manscaped Platinum Premium Package 4.0. 4.0 is everywhere at the moment. So get the Ultra Premium Body Wash, Ultra Premium 2-in-1 Shampoo and Conditioner, Ultra Premium Deodorant, Crop Preserver, and Anti-Chafing Deodorant because summer is coming. And honestly, when I play tennis, that is a big issue. So that is something that I'll be looking into for sure. But yeah, also they have... Didn't realize Manscaped also have their own cologne. We had this discussion in the Discord. I don't think I've worn cologne since year 12 formal. I don't even use it. But Manscaped got all that cruelty-free cologne. Very good. We tried to get, I think it was Theo was asking suggestions for a cologne. I did suggest a Manscaped one, and he said not enough time because I think he needed 1 or 2 days notice on it. But
anything that gets you to put some cologne on would be cruelty-free to the rest of us.
20% off with your FTTV code at manscaped.com. Check it out. Heaps of stuff there. Perfect. Christmas is coming soon. Like, seriously, you don't want to be shopping for Christmas like 2 weeks before. Just buy stuff now. Buy 5 or 6, put them in the cupboard, and then hand them out to your dad, your uncle, your brother, your cousin, whatever. And use the code FTTV for 20% off.
Thank you, George. Another fantastic read as always. And thank you to our sponsors at Manscaped. All right, moving on to finals footy fantasy. We've, of course, been playing this through the finals. We're 3 weeks down, 1 week to go. And the last week is going to be strange because you're picking 12 aside. So we might talk quickly through strategy. But let's quickly review the week that was. I'm more than happy to start. I had an okay week. I finished 473rd for the week with a 1533. Overall rank now of 234. I think I did okay in terms of where I targeted. So I aimed for Geelong forward. So Hawkins scored pretty well. Stengel went all right. Cameron not as good as the others. And then went after Swans mids. And that seemed to go okay with Warner, Mills, and who am I forgetting? Parker. And then like Goulden and Heaney in the forward line. So yeah, that was really good. But a couple of teams did better than me out there. And Neil and McCluggage in the mids were just awful. They both had 70. So didn't have Crisp, which was probably the big miss from this week. George, how did you go?
Pretty average. Scored 1,450. Weekly rank of about 1,500. So overall ranked is 1,000. Had a good week one. Pretty mediocre last 2 weeks. Did pick, I have to call him King Patrick now, but Dangerfield in the midfield. So he was really good. He's, I think, a bit of rest for him mid-year preseason, and he can fire for the grand final. Defense was really bad. No one scored over 70, so let's not talk about that. But yeah, forward line was okay. Had Big Hawkins and Cameron. I think, Bailey's been really good. Heaney was good as well. So I think just the defense let me down there. But for this week, generally small forwards historically haven't done super well in a grand final. So that's something to be wary of, but you never know. Anything can happen on the day. So maybe I'll limit to maybe just Papley. Don't know about Stingle, not too sure, but go for Tom Hawkins, multiple scoring avenues up forward. But yeah, so many plays to pick. So there's a lot of, I think most people's teams are going to look the same, like the first 4 plays, and then after that, maybe 1 or 2 point of differences. So like I've got Rampy in my team. I know he doesn't score well. Role isn't super great, more of a lockdown-ish role, but he can play. I think he's mostly key position as well. Plays undersized, but I suppose experienced player. You never know. Maybe he takes a few marks on the day. So that's sort of just a pod to go for. But pick anyone you want, I guess.
Yep. I think I scored about 1460, and then I don't even want to probably say what my rank is, but I think it's about 2,000 something. But yeah, can't even remember who I had. So we'll, I guess, just talk about this week. And as you said, George, you got to go for the pods. You're going for the weekly win here in grand final.
Yeah.
So got to go for the pods. Someone left field, like a back pocket or something. Hope they get 25 touches somehow, or whoever kicks a bag in the forward line. But just go for the pods. I mean, you could load up, and if you think a team's going to win by a bit, like if you think Geelong are going to win quite easily, go more of their players. But I think for the most part, both these teams are probably are pretty good scorers. So you'll definitely want to have a lot of Swans as well. But you notice any pods, JD, if you're scrolling through?
Well, I think the one thing that's interesting is that Mitch Duncan got moved into defense this week, which he hasn't been so far. So he's probably a really easy one. Not a pod by any means, but just an easy pick. In terms of pods, I'm not actually too sure. I've started having a look, and I think it looks like there's about 4 obvious forward selections in Heaney, Goulden, Hawkins, Cameron. So there's like potentially 2 spots for forward pods, and I think Papley is potentially one, and then
Brian Myers just got 8 coaches' votes.
Yeah, he's put up an 82, which was a good score.
Buddy in the grand final, surely.
Yeah, but I don't know. Buddy's
didn't mention, by the way. I just refreshed Twitter before. Buddy signed a 1-year deal.
Oh, there you go.
Very nice.
So there you go.
There you go. I guess like whether you take Stewart or not is an interesting question, because I assume that's where Ryan Clark's probably going this week. So yeah, you had like Zach Guthrie and Jake Kolodashny like scoring really well last week, but it was a bit of a blowout. So whether or not you can bank on them versus others is I think so. Just having a quick look, it's probably like defense and forward where I see the most pod differences. The only other thing is like if you're going to stack your midfield one way or the other, I could see myself like quite heavily stacking Swans mids again and leaving the Geelong ones to the side. But we'll see. It's
probably silly, but Hayden McLean and Amadi are both forwards. They probably get some ruck time. I don't know. It's probably not amazing for fantasy, but I don't know. You won't want to go them debut in a grand final. Not debuting, but like fresh into a grand final.
Yeah.
Probably not amazing game time. I don't know.
I want to say Amadi's average was like 40 for the year. So
their averages won't be great, but sometimes they played as forwards, and I don't know.
Yep. Yeah, I guess like Reed's role.
McLean's
like
52.
Yep. Reed was more like a 70 average. So anyway, like I think
you need some luck. You got to go for the win.
Yeah, definitely. You're going to have to be picking for who you think's going to end up kind of
not picking a chalk
team.
You got to go for the win.
Yep. But yeah, to George's points, right? Like you probably have like a lot of similar for the top first 4 to 5 picked, and then it's the last 1 or 2 that are going to make or break a lot of the teams this week. All right, so let's move on to the trade period then before we preview the grand final. We're not going to go to lengthy in this, but maybe just some quick thoughts on some of the rumored or talked about moves that have gone on this week. So one we've talked about or mentioned a couple of times already, but it looks like Dunkley has nominated or at least has like stated a preference to go to Brisbane Lions during the trade period. He's done this once before, trying to get to Essendon a couple of years ago unsuccessfully, but it seems like, I don't know, just a bit more momentum behind it this time, a bit more likely it may happen. So I guess let's not talk about whether or not the deal will or won't get through. It's probably useless for us to speculate on that. But do you think Dunkley is a good fit for the Lions, just given what we've seen in this final series? And then do you think him moving there makes him more or less Supercoach relevant for the year ahead?
Definitely more relevant for sure. Yeah. I mean, I thought he was a lock either way, to be honest, if he's forward.
Let's assume he's midfielder, because I think if he's forward, he's a pretty easy pick. But
I think he'll be forward.
I think he has to be, yeah, based off his role. But if you want to say that, I think he's still a decent option in the midfield.
I think
if you want to say that, he'll be a forward.
He'll help.
I think
he will improve the Lions. I think they need that big-bodied mid. Jared Lyons is VFL player now or something. I think he's been a bit injured, but he'll probably play forward next year. So they need that replacement for him. Neil needs help. I know McCluggage, maybe he gets pushed up to a wing more with Ashcroft coming in as well as Dunkley. I don't know, maybe they rotate McCluggage and Ashcroft on a wing and inside. I'm not sure, but I think it'll help him. It'll help Brisbane for sure. And yeah, I'll pick him in my team next year. I think, yeah. Anna, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I was saying if he's gone up there, 6-year deal, he's playing in the guts. Like, there's no other questions about it.
I think your biggest point there is like Neil needs the help. We've saw how susceptible Brisbane Lions have been when he gets locked down. And while McCluggage is good, he clearly still needs someone feeding him the ball. He can't win the game off his own boot. And I feel like Dunkley is someone that can rack it up enough that it will help them.
And Neil will continue to get the attention.
Block for him.
Yeah. And to your point, like Lions has fallen off a cliff. Rayner is not an answer in the midfield, and like Robertson and Beast Mode Reece Matheson showed a little bit when they've been given mid-time, but Dunkley is a clear upgrade on both of those, so should be a really good acquisition for them.
It's the implications of what it does for probably Jack McRae. It makes like it puts McRae higher up the pecking order for a slot in your fantasy team, but just one word answer. If you had to pick a team right now, would you pick Jack McRae off the news of Dunkley moving?
Yeah, I've said that. Yeah, if he's gone.
Yes.
It gives him a four-man rotation.
Okay. So the stats were with the 10 games that McRae had without Dunkley in 2021, he averaged something like 123 Supercoach, and we've just clearly seen McRae's been pushed more to the outside with some of the other dog bids going in. So I'm on board with McRae next year as long as he's actually getting back to those CBAs. If they're just going to give Bailey Smith or someone else more CBAs and McRae's keeping his role, then I'm still not interested.
Yeah, Weston McLean, I think they would want mid-time, just whether they get it or not.
They feel play what Dunkley was playing.
Yeah.
McRae's only 28. And he's never been a guy that's relied on his athleticism. He's in his prime. He's mid-time.
I think
a lot of miles in the legs, though. 200 games.
Who's this?
Penalty declined at
he doesn't.
McRae. Benenbury declined at 29.
I guess like for Dunkley, assuming he's not a forward option, if he's mid only, he averaged 109 off 50% CBAs. You've got to imagine he's getting 15 to 25% more CBAs a game. I don't see why he wouldn't be able to scale up to a 115 to 120 unless you think that the difference in game style is enough where he's not getting as much ball around the ground or anything like that. All right. Shall we also talk about one that hasn't been mentioned as much but could be relevant in Lloyd Meek, with talks of him potentially looking for a trade elsewhere. Are there any good spots that you kind of see him landing that would make him an interesting Supercoach option for the year ahead?
I only put this one JD down because, again, Toomey just tweeted before that the Hawks have put themselves up the top of chasing him. I mean, there's a few clubs. I think the Eagles are still into him, even like GWS and stuff. But then George reminded me that he's going to be like 400K, which just is so awkward.
I think 430.
And it's like, yes, true ruck roll. He can probably still make good money off that, but you're really betting on him. Like what he averages here, 85. But again, always playing with Darcy or even like a lob or whatever when Darcy was out. But he'd have to be like true number one, like no second ruck business or, no other forward ruck playing with him. And 430K, it's too much, isn't it?
I'll consider it because if he can get a clear number one ruck role, because Reeves is always injured at Hawthorn, and Lynch, I'm not sure he's the answer. Still young, but you never know. But if he can get clear number one, and then no duo ruck shenanigans, which is kind of hard to tell because it can always happen. Like we saw Marshall, like no way Campbell comes in. Marshall scores like 30 or 40. There's just so many issues with so many other rucks, and Grundy, I think he's most likely heading to Melbourne.
Gordy on the same team.
I know.
We had him on the same team all these years now. Surely.
Yeah.
So it's assessing the sort of what's going on elsewhere and trying to pick best available. But yeah, it's going to be quite difficult. But I'm not against paying 430 for him if in the right circumstances, but need to see some more.
Gordon was where I was going to go next. I'm going to keep on the ruck theme. If he does get his way to Melbourne, does it make them both irrelevant for 2023, both Gorn and Grundy?
Melbourne, yeah, pretty much. Like, how does that work? Like, they're not great. Like, Grundy isn't a forward. Gorn's tried to be one, and he's shown like, he can create a contest in the air, but he can't finish his goals off. I don't know. But if they're both at the same team, I don't know how the hell you even consider picking either of them. I know Grundy would be the cheaper of the two, but it's just simple answers no. Simple answers yes. They're just not options.
Yeah, agree.
If that happens.
Okay, and then a few others. I'll just kind of read them out, and if you think they could be relevant, then give a shout. Otherwise, I'll keep moving. So Billy Frampton is rumored to be looking at a move to the Pies.
No.
Don't be surprised if he does all right at the Pies. But no.
Dogs to sign Liam Jones, who could be as low as 263K for next year.
No.
Okay. We've got Ben Long, who's requesting a trade to Gold Coast.
What's the price?
I don't know. I haven't even bothered putting the research into that one.
No.
No.
Unless he gets extended.
Yeah.
Might get a good role though.
So the next one is probably a little bit more interesting, which is Logue and Tucker look like they're going to get to North, especially with the picks that were given to North. Looks like almost tailor-made to facilitate those trades.
No, and
that'd be too much, wouldn't they? Yeah, no.
I think Darcy Tucker is the one I'm somewhat interested in. He's going to be low 200s and was kind of talked about as a potential midfield breakout for Freo this preseason, and was talked up quite highly until he had injuries, which I think is his big problem, injury history. So Tucker is one that I'm somewhat interested in watching for the preseason, but Logue probably less relevant. Bobby Hill, I think there's talk of him getting to Collingwood, but small forward, and like Collingwood are flush for small forwards. It's quite a strange one to me. I think that's
like 230K. I was not aware that Tucker would be that cheap. That's a watch, I think. But he can play inside, but we'll see. It needs circumstances to line up.
Okay, Fiorini and Jeremy Sharp are both potential moves from Gold Coast. Sharp to Fremantle is not as interesting, but Fiorini to potentially Collingwood would be interesting. Fiorini is, I think, roughly 356K, has been crushing it in the VFL. What's been doing? Like 100? Yeah, 135.
He's clear by, I think, 15, 20 points of the next person.
Collingwood, I pick. That's like real. That's easy.
It's free.
Yeah.
Essendon have expressed interest in Tom Phillips, who was a well-known Supercoach villain from a couple of years back. So let's just keep moving on. I hope that doesn't happen. Ollie Henry to Geelong is one that looks likely, but once again, small forwards are probably not Supercoach relevant. And then I guess like we're almost getting back into the like some of the ones that have been talked about a little bit more. But Luke Jackson back to Freo probably just hurts him and Darcy. I don't think that's a big win unless he ends up at West Coast without Nick Nat and is number one ruck, in which case it could be interesting. Lob has been asked to go to the Bulldogs, but the Bulldogs said no. Is that right? And then Junior Rioli to
Freo said no, I think.
Yeah, Freo like, no, you're staying.
Yeah, sorry, Freo said no. Yeah, sorry if I said Dogs. And then the only other one is like Tanner Bruin to Geelong, which I can't imagine that Supercoach relevant. What did he average this year? Do you know?
He had a few good scores, I think.
Yeah, and he already got a lot of mid time. So
yeah, like going to Geelong, I don't know.
So even if he plays all right at Geelong, I have a feeling he's already going to be expensive enough, and probably he might be forward mid.
Maybe, but yeah, there'll be other options.
He had 27% CBAs. Okay, not as high as what I thought it was. So he's potentially watch. All right, we somehow covered off almost everyone in the trade period in the end. Is there anyone else that I've missed that you wanted to talk about?
Rankin.
Tigers ones if they get done.
Oh, Rankin, yeah. Oh yeah, with Hopper and Green.
If they get done, but yeah,
Hopper's the one that's like super relevant if he gets across. Oh, sorry, Hopper and Taranto if he's still a forward is interesting. I'd say.
Yeah. 490k Taranto. Yes or no?
Yes,
it's pretty good value. Yeah, but it just depends on other forwards. Yeah.
Yeah, it slightly depends on what happens with like Butters, Gilmore, Rosie, Himmelberg. Yeah, but yeah, like Taranto's definitely strong consideration. He's like right up the top of those. I'd be on my watch list for starting.
Alone, yes, next year. Got to see.
Yep. Okay. Let's move on to the grand final then. Cats versus Swans, one we've all been waiting for. By the way, how did we do on tips last week? Was it 2 out of 2 for me and then 1 out of 2 for you two? Cats haters. All right. Okay. So Cats versus Swans.
I tipped the Cats.
Did you? Okay, it was just George. George did suck in. All right.
Better for theatre.
All right. So Cats versus Swans. Let's hear your tip, your first goal, and who's going to win the Norm.
Yeah, they're the multis, the good one. Quick story. I remember a mate. This is about 2016, so 6 years ago. The Dogs Swans grannies. You could on like the tab machines before the game, you can press like the mystery one, and he just pressed it and did like 5 of them, and one of them was Parker first goal, JJ Norm Smith paying like 400 or whatever, like something so high because JJ obviously wasn't afraid. I had like $5 on it, and he won a few grand. So funny story, but I don't know how the hell that happened. But I think the Swans always tend to kick the first goal, so I'm going to go with someone from there. I'm not going to go for someone too obvious either, but maybe like a Chad Warner out of the guts, something like that. It's just luck of the draw, really. But Norm Smith, I'm going the Pap. Have a big game. Wag the finger around the MCG. I know he's like a polarizing figure. I love him. I don't know if like you guys do, but like
yeah, he's great.
He just loves playing footy. Gets into the L position. Like he's not a thug. He just loves playing footy. I just think it's awesome. So go for him, and then I'll go for the Swannies. Hopefully they can get it done. Hopefully it's a good game. I don't want like a Geelong blowout or something. I know people didn't like watching the Tigers blowouts, and I can see that. But if that happens, only the team that is doing it enjoys that. So hope it's a good game, all in all. But yeah, I'll go for the Swans. Why not? What do you reckon, George?
First goal, Logan McDonald. He has not been in good form, but it's going to shift. It's going to land in his lap. Norm Smith. I want to say Isaac, but his role has been he's been playing a bit more up the ground certainly in the last game.
Like 5th or 6th favourite.
He hasn't been super great in the finals. Was okay this week. I don't know. I'll say
could have iced the game at 3/4 time, by the way. Missed that set shot.
I honestly haven't thought about it too much. I'm not too sure. I'm going to say Buddy.
Ooh.
Buddy will go nuts. And then for the win, I'll change that. Callum Mills, I'll say. And then for the win, I got the Swans. My gut says Geelong. I just think the way they play is so frustrating to play against. If they can somehow not let them get away with playing the spare in defence, I'm not a coach. I don't know how to deal with that. I don't know. I know you played footy. How do you deal with that?
Sorry,
if the opposition team plays with 7 at the back, how do you deal with that?
I wasn't a key forward, so I was I was a small. I wasn't. I mean, you just got to keep them occupied. Like that's the thing Brisbane didn't do. They just left them alone for like the whole. You got to put some body on them at some point. Bring someone out of the contest.
It's gonna be Clark to Stewart. Sure.
It's got to be someone.
Hopefully. But yeah,
you have to roll someone up onto them. Every coach that I played under did that, but again, they weren't the AFL coaches, so I don't know.
If Sydney can outwork them through the middle of the ground, I think they can win. They can't let them stream on turnover in the midfield like Brisbane did. So I'll tip the Swans. Swans, Callum, and Logan.
Quick though, good point you had with like Chris Scott destroying Fagan. Like that, Longmire I think is a much better tactical coach. Like he will have something, and his team.
They can play slow if they want.
Yeah, they will have plans for sure in place. Whereas Brisbane just sort of went in and said, "We'll roll with what we've been doing and see if it works." So I think like Don Pike's on the coaching team, right? I know he got the sack from Crom, but he's tactically pretty good. Got a pretty good side to a grand final, so they'll have something. JD, you had to roll with the Cats. You had them from day one.
Yeah, I tipped them at the start of the final series. I feel like I have to pick the Cats, even though if I clean slate, I probably would edge Swans. So I'm gonna go for like the pure George despair double, and not only will the Cats win it, but Dangerfield will walk out with the Norm Smith.
Clang with his 2 medals.
Yep. And the big smile ear to ear. Probably get some media happening at the same time. Yeah, so I'm going to go for that one. I think that'll bring me the most joy. And then
George would watch the post-match. No chance if that happened.
No. Well, can I just... Yeah. So you finish first. I was going to interrupt. Okay, Dangerfield left the Crows. The first thing he said was, "It's so great to be at a club with history," and he did that to piss the Crows off for sure. Crows have anyway. Back to you, but worked out the door. Just slap in the face and see you later. Go on.
Okay. It sounds like Danger got the air reaction he wanted. So I'm gonna go. Let's go for a fun one because I think I'd probably pick like Hawkins or Cameron. They're probably the obvious ones if I'm going for a Geelong win. But I'm gonna go for Dill Stevens. He's one for out of the box. These are like the long odds ones, but he's kicked 2 goals in. He's kicked a goal in the last 2 games in the finals. So. I don't know. There's no good reason why. Just Dill Stevens. That'll be the one that does it.
Mate. Go for the
clouds. But neither of these teams have particularly big grounds, especially Geelong. So, maybe a winger finds a little bit more space than what he's accustomed to, and goal comes that way. Otherwise, Goulden was one that I liked as an option as well. Sneaky little option there.
I thought he was awesome in the 4th on the weekend as well.
Yeah. We saw a little bit of Blakey first year Goulden.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
Yep. That's one thing I do like about the Swans. They've got so many players that can pop up and win them the game. You're not just relying on one player with X factor. It doesn't just have to be Papley. It can be Papley, Heaney, Buddy, Mills, Goulden. It just goes on and on. They've got about 8 to 10. Warner adds another.
J-Mac had that intercept.
Yeah. There's just so many of them that can have those moments that win games. Yeah. All right. Well, I think that is everything from us this week. Very excited for the finals. Thanks to everyone that tuned in, joined us, and listened. And we will see you for a debrief after the grand final, and that'll be our last episode for the year. We'll go over what we thought, who won the Norm, and all that good stuff. Maybe a little bit more trade news and how we finish with finals footy fantasy, and that'll be the end of the year for us. So looking forward to that, and looking forward to the grand final this weekend. But once again, thank you. Signing off.